Hello, I'm Dr. Fan from the French Red Cross in Paris, and I will talk about adolescence and addictive behavior. We will make this in 4 chapters. I will have some words about adolescence, then I will talk about addiction, then we will describe some of addiction like cannabis addiction or video game addiction, and we will finish with a short and brief description on how we could take care of those adolescents. Chapter 1. What's an adolescent? An adolescent is a person who deeply inside him wants to be an adult, but at the same time it is a person who is still a little bit a child. When you take care about adolescent, you have to deal with this ambivalence of adolescence and taking into account both things to make him progress. The other particular thing is in adolescence is taking risk. Taking risk permits him to enter the adult world with all this danger. Technological and sociological progress have been made because some adolescents took risks. So taking risk at the adolescence is totally normal. On the contrary, put himself in danger is totally unacceptable. That's why we have to take care to make the difference between taking risk, which is normal, and jeopardize his life and his future, which is totally unacceptable. Adolescence is a great period of change and crisis. Progressively, the boy and the girl will become woman and man by changing physically, emotionally, and intellectually. The first change is physical, at the beginning of puberty. The body will change and she will accept those new changes. Emotionally, he will change too. He will recognize his emotion as his emotion, and he will be so able to recognize the other emotion. At the end, he will also change intellectually, acquiring new skills and competence he will have to acquire to enter adult worlds. So these changes will took place in 3 phases: opposition to his parents and to the adult world, to say, I'm me as a person, affirmation, being himself as one unique person, and by the end, the social insertion in the adult society. This period is also a period of risk because during changement, during crisis, he will have to adopt the good behavior to acquire those skills which will be essentially in his adult life. At the adolescence, some skills are already developed and some others are not. Adolescent is thinking emotionally with his heart before thinking with his head. That means that during the exchanges with adults, sometimes it's difficult to understand that for him it's more important what he or she's feeling than what she's thinking. And of course that will be important when we talk and take in charge those adolescents. But some other skills are still in development, as you see on the slides. From the early age of childhood to the end of the adolescence, the brain will develop. The neuroplasticity of the brain will permit the child to acquire new competences. Of course, those competences will be acquired with a constant interaction with the world and the environment. That's why it's very important for adolescents to be in constant interaction through schools, through peers, and through adults to acquire those skills. Taking decision, having the good behavior, having a selective attention, and solving problem will be the skill that should be acquired by the end of adolescence. Chapter 2, Addiction. The DSM-5 is classifying addiction into a single phenomenon, starting with mild symptoms and continuing until severe ones. The DSM-5 also is recognizing the gambling disorders and gambling addiction into all the addiction process. Internet addiction is also in the DSM-5, but the DSM-5 is admitting that we need more research to see what's this internet addiction. We will try now to describe addiction by answering to a question. What's the difference between passion and addiction? And to say it the French way, what's the difference between an oenologist and an alcoholic? Là est la question. Cycle of dependence. Abusive use started generally with feeling of daily problem. In front of those daily problems, the adolescents will try to deal with it because it creates stress and emotion, and he will try to deal with it by seeking solution. Sometimes he will find drug as a solution to solve his problem or to feel less stress and distress by this problem. Of course, because he is finding a solution, the behavior will be positively reinforced, and after that, each time he will have daily problem, he will be pushed to use the same solution he has learned from the beginning. The difference between passion and addiction is the consequences. Each person has his own skills, his own competences to deal with stress and emotion. But when you're painting, or if you use drug, if you like the taste of wine, or you like the effect of alcohol, in the two circumstances you will deal with stress and emotion. But the difference will be on the consequences of your behavior. An oenologist won't have the same future. Craving and reward system is now well described by neuroscientists. The purpose of reward system is to indicate to a person and to an animal how he feels, good or bad. When you're in the sun, for example, you're stimulating your reward system, indicating you can stay in the sun and having good time. All the drugs are artificially stimulating those reward system, and it's one of the main mechanisms who could explain addiction and craving. Of course, you can also naturally stimulate your reward system and things will become different. A connoisseur of Saint-Émilion will stimulate his reward system, but he will get more connoisseur and more connoisseur. An alcoholic will stay an alcoholic. Now we will try to describe the mechanism of physical dependence. in human bodies, there's always a balance between sleepiness and awakening. And this balance is due to a neurobiological function that maintains this balance. When you are taking drugs, you are disturbing this neurobiological balance. For example, if you take some heroin, you will increase sleepiness and hormone of sleepiness. The organism will react by producing awakening hormone. If you stop quickly and brutally drugs, the balance will be not there no more. That means you will have too much awakening hormone and too less sleepiness one, if I can explain it simply. That's why when, for example, heroin addicts stop brutally heroin, they feel pain, stress, because they have a biological climate or over-secreting awakening hormone. Chapter 3, drug abuse and other addictive behavior. Cannabis is the most illicit drug used by adolescents. If adolescents like cannabis, it's because it makes them feel good, relaxed. It makes them have fun with friends. But it has also side effects we have to discuss. Cannabis has an impact on reflex and increase by 2 the risk of having an accident. Also, cannabis has an impact on emotion, and of course it will affect memory, because memory is linked to emotion. You will remain and you will an information much more quicker if it's charged emotionally. That means an information without an emotion, you will not receive it or retain it. That means that under cannabis use, you will have memory problems. Of course, if you take cannabis too long, it will affect not only memories, but other cognitive skills. A recent research which have followed many adolescents have proved that after a long period of cannabis use, the IQ is affected. The fourth problem with cannabis is the impact on psychiatric illnesses. Most of the time, cannabis does not create it, but it's worsened all the fragility of adolescence. A depressed child will get more depressed under cannabis. And a fragile child, which has risk factor of schizophrenia, will go further into the illness while using cannabis. And of course, in a consultation, we always make the balance between the positive effects of cannabis, which are real, and the side effects, which are real too. Alcohol. Of course, alcohol is being used by humans from the beginning of humanity. And of course, it always had a good representation. For most of people, drinking alcohol means partying, having good time, being with friends. But alcohol has another representation, which means dependent, accidents, and drug abuse. With all adolescents, we will have to take into account that alcohol is by the same time a way to get in touch and to socialize, and by the same time a main risk factor of accidents and problems. Alcoholism is reducing in most Occidental countries, but binge drinking, which means heavy drinking is increasing among adolescents. This binge drinking has consequences on the development of adolescents. By distorting general capacity, it's slowing adolescents' reflex, and of course it's a high risk factor of accidents and behavioral trouble. Alcohol also have an impact of control and disinhibition. Sometimes when adolescents are drinking too much, they have after that a lack of judgment, who can lead them to behavioral problems like having sex while you don't want to aggressivity and other misconduct. The last things with binge drinking, research proved that it has an impact on mood changes, because once you get high with alcohol, after that you can go very low during a withdrawal syndrome. When you have binge drinking too long and too much time, it can affect your mood and create a depression and increase sometimes with fragile adolescents to suicide and other psychopathological problems. Video game is the most popular leisure among adolescents. And of course, the progress has permitted to create wonderful worlds and wonderful games. Remember the first game in the 50s? It was an oscilloscope. Hard to be addicted with that thing. But now things had changed. Massively multiple online games permits to get access to a wonderful world, wonderful virtual landscapes, games with other people, and competition who permits you to get new skills. For most adolescents, video game won't be a problem. But for children and adolescents with vulnerability, it won't be the same. In our consultation, some adolescents are seeking refuge through video gaming, and that's not the same thing. Once, if you are depressed and if you have a school or social phobia, it is easy to get a refuge into video games. But as we said, a good life is 1 foot in the reality and 1 foot in the imagination. And that's what we try to do with children. Just stay playing video games, but keep a foot in the reality. Chapter 4. How can we help adolescents? Prevention is very important, and we know now which program is effective and which one is not. Developing programs on psychosocial skills seems to be the most effective. Helping parents is crucial because we know that parents are the main protective factors. Helping the child is important too. Of course, if you say to an adolescent, don't do it, it just gives him the envy to do it. So the good program is the one who focuses on developing his competences. Of course, other general programs are also effective, and you have to give information and to create laws to protect those adolescents. To illustrate prevention program based on development of skills, I would like to talk a little bit about our French program CUSA, based on emotion and cannabis. This program is focusing adolescent skills it permits to the adolescent to develop his capacity to recognize emotion, to see the impact of cannabis and emotion, and to play role games to give him the skills to cope with his own emotion. The program is under evaluation, and I hope we will have good results soon. Scientific literature has shown that all programs who are effective on alcohol abuse are based on harm reduction. That was, we have created the program DOCA 5. It is a manga which is centered to alcohol use, and the goal of this prevention program is to give adolescents tools to deal with abusing alcohol use. The main thing is not to say don't drink alcohol, because he won't follow us. It says if you drink, you do have to acquire special skills to stay alive. I will talk a little bit about therapy. Of course, we don't have any medication against cannabis use for adolescents, but we do have psychotherapy program who works. All the psychotherapy programs who are effective are based on a program on 3 phases. The first phase consists in creating the islands with the adolescents. Most adolescents doesn't want to go to psychotherapy because for them, seeking for help means not to be independent. And secondly, for them, seeking for help means being weak, and the last things they want is to look as weak. So it is very important for a therapist to create an island with the adolescents before request for changes. The second phase is based on request for change. I mean, to work with him on drug consumption and to help him to self-examine his consumption. The third phase is to work and to continue to work on consumption with cognitive behavioral therapy that gives him tools to cope with prevention of relapse, to analyze his consumption and to find solution to fight against it. For adolescents, it's also to enter his world and to take care of other problems, life problems, family problems, school problems. Also, it is very important not to focus only on addictions, but to take care of adolescent in his whole globality. Family therapy is also effective for adolescents having drug problems. One of them, the MDFT, focuses on 4 corners. In this therapy, we're having sessions with the adolescent, with the parents, with the family all together, and with the extra environment. It is important because addiction is a multidimensional problem. There's not one cause that can explain the addictive process. There are main factors, risk factors and protective factors that are including in the process of the development of the addictive behavior. MDFT has been tested. Oh zut, ça j'ai perdu. Bah oui. Ah merde. Ah merde.
Il faut aller jusqu'au bout après.
Aller jusqu'au bout. Bah, parce que ça faisait commercial et j'ai eu un...
Ah non, après, tu jugeras après, au moment où on en a une comme ça.
D'accord.
Refais la même.
Bon, je refais la même.
4e chapitre, 5e, 3e prise. Action.
Family therapy is also effective. One of those therapy, MDFT, is focusing on 4 corners. In this therapy, we have sessions with the adolescents, with the parents, with the family all together, and all members of extra-familial environment. The goal of the therapy is to have an action on risk factor and protective ones. In all sessions, we are trying first to get an island with the adolescent, with the parents, with the family together. and then to assess those risk and protective factors. The goal of it is to give the family the skills and the opportunity to help their child, because in systemic therapy we think that for adolescents, family is the best therapy. The progress of chemistry and new technology have given more and more opportunity for adolescents to have fun. Most of adolescents will just have fun, but the fragile ones, the ones with vulnerability, will fall into a trap. Our goal is not to prevent them to have fun. It's just to make them aware about the consequences and to give them skills to cope and deal with those bad consequences. We do not help them. We help them to help themselves because they are the future.